once it's clear to you that I want to live a life of spirituality, then there are going to be some compromises.
When I first heard those 4 things,
Yeah.
no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, and no intoxication, I was like, bro, that's my life.
What does spiritual fun even look like?
It's a different type of fun. It's a fun that's sustainable. It's a fun that feels good. Fun that's non-destructive.
If you're a narcissistic person, you may experience joy from being a manipulative person and seeing that, you're putting people through difficulty.
The fun that they experience has a limit to it. And when it reaches that limit, it only gets darker, weirder, and more strange.
Before we jump into this episode, I'd love to invite you to join this candid spiritual community to hear more conversations that will help you become happier, healthier, and more healed. All I want you to do is click on that subscribe button because I love your support. I love seeing all the comments pouring through, all the love pouring through, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to go on this journey with you, whether you're a spiritual seeker or you're just curious about the topic. And we really hope that our conversations will provide you food for thought and inspiration for your own spiritual journey. So join us for honest, candid discussions about spirituality for soul's sake.
For soul's sake, for soul's sake.
For Soul's Sake is back. Roundtable episode, another one for you to enjoy. We're talking about honest spirituality, a conversation in which I bring together the incredible Keli Woods and Nāma. We are discussing a theme from the Bhagavad Gita. And today we're going to loosen up a bit. I think sometimes we can be quite, what's the word I'm looking for?
Serious.
Grave.
But today we're going to try and make it a little bit fun. Today, the verse is from chapter 9, verse number 2 of the Bhagavad Gita. This knowledge, translation, this knowledge is the king of education, the most secret of all secrets. It's the purest knowledge, and because it gives direct perception of the self by realization, it's the perfection of religion. Here's the part that we want to discuss here. It is everlasting, and it is joyfully performed. Spiritualists can be seen as quite sober and not very fun folk sometimes.
Yeah.
Would you say?
My initial conception of a spiritual person was that they were sat with their back very straight in meditation and not really engaging with the world and just very stern and serious and everything's profound and you got to avoid fun and yeah.
I mean, my perception of it was that they were going to be like monks from Tibet that are like really into Shaolin arts and stuff. That was my perception of a spiritualist very young.
Yeah.
Like sitting in a dark place.
Discipline.
Only eating rice. Performing martial arts.
Doing backflips.
Yeah, and just meditating 20 hours a day.
Yeah. When I was 19, I used to read these martial arts magazines. I used to love like martial arts.
You're a Bruce Lee fanatic.
Bruce Lee, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about water.
Be like Walter, my friend. Powerful philosophical point that was, by the way. Anyway, I open this martial arts magazine and I get hooked on this story. This 19-year-old kid. So this is back, like, I don't know, back 2010. 19-year-old kid, and he's off to the Shaolin temple to train with the Shaolin monks. And he writes about his journey, and he goes, I opened the toilet and it was just a stone hole in the floor. Somehow reading that, I was like, oh, this is exciting. But I was like, it can't be particularly enjoyable, can it?
Right.
And then he's going through like absolute discipline, learning the Shaolin arts. And that's pretty, it's a really advanced form of Kung Fu. I was thinking, where's the joy? Where's the fun? Like, he didn't talk about it.
But I think sometimes people think that is the fun that
The austerity and
like even now when I talk to some people, they say I just went through 30 days of silence and no eating, and or I went and traveled and just hiked for 6 months, and that was a really spiritual experience. Like, but that doesn't sound very fun, does it? Like, I wonder, people kind of look for the enjoyment in the extreme levels of austerity. Do you think? Is that correct? Do you think?
Yeah, fun can be experienced differently by different people as well.
For sure,
right?
for sure.
If you're a sadist or if you're an evil person, you can have, you can experience fun and joy from others suffering. Like, that doesn't make sense, but they're feeling, if you're if you're a narcissistic person, you may experience joy from, being a manipulative person and seeing that, you're putting people through difficulty. And so what is the correct definition of fun, or what is a spiritualist's version of fun. For me, I heard someone say that spiritual life without a sense of humor is impossible.
Wow.
Which I really liked, and it's something that's kept me around for 8 years, because I think you should keep the serious stuff serious, but there's no reason the fun stuff can't be fun.
Yeah, it's because most people like box it off as you don't get to eat on certain days, you're fasting sometimes. You also have a restricted diet in one sense, because for me, I'm a vegetarian and don't eat meat, fish, or eggs. On top of that, there's a restriction on gambling. It's a vow that I've taken: no gambling, no meat eating, no intoxication. So I can't have a beer, can't smoke. Those were the days.
What do you do with your life?
I know. And then the last one, no illicit sex. So you kind of get boxed in, innit? What do you do to enjoy life? How do you have fun?
When I first heard those 4 things,
Yeah.
no meat eating, no illicit sex, no gambling, and
No intoxication.
no intoxication, I was like, bro, that's my life.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do with what am I gonna do? It was so confronting. It was so difficult. But actually, somewhere else in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, "Param dristvana vartate." He says, actually, to give up these things, we need to experience more fun on a higher level, a higher vibration. And it's kind of wild, but what most people would consider as boring, we consider to be an incredible night. A blissful experience of chanting or dancing or discussing, or also just hanging out, but there's no intoxication and no one's getting hurt, and it's like, well, where's the fun? But
It's a different type of fun. It's a fun that's sustainable. It's
I
a
like
fun
that.
that feels good. It's a sustainable fun. Right?
Yeah.
Fun that's non-destructive. And that's actually it's an innocent fun, in the sense that, when children have fun and they're playing around in the playground, it's just non-duplicious. I'm a kid and I'm having a good time. And it's such a sweet thing to watch. When you watch, you've got kids, right? When you just see your kids just hanging around in the garden, bopping around, no agenda.
Yeah.
Just want to have fun.
My son just walks around randomly and has fun just doing that. I'll be like, what are you doing? Walk? What way are you walking to?
It doesn't need a point.
Simplicity of life. Like, I think most people, either they've had an experience with kids, or even with traveling, when you go to a place that doesn't have all the luxuries that we're used to, and you see people living in villages, and you're like, well, how do they have fun? And it's just the simple things, like you see them huddling, like in India, you'll see like old men huddling around a fire and just cracking jokes, and there's no.
I watched an amazing program. I think it's called Rich House, Poor House or something, where they do this house swap. So a family from the top 10% and a family from the bottom 10% of the financial bracket swap houses for a week, swap lifestyles for a week. And something amazing always happens in every episode. The family that comes from the top 10%, very wealthy family, are now in this very restricted and limited situation. And they don't have the money or the resource they usually have, so they have to get creative. So instead of them all sitting in separate rooms with their hi-fi playing on their PS3s or whatever, they're now having to, create a game of like bowling out of, like empty plastic bottles, and they're all in this tiny kitchen together having the best time. And they all say at the end of the program, like, we never would have done that. We never would have thought to go into our kitchen and get these plastic bottles and make up a game of bowling, but we were forced to because we didn't have the luxury that we usually have. But actually it brought us together more, and we had more fun, and we weren't all separate and in our rooms. And I think that's so profound, like the simplicity of life.
Yeah, there's a quote that I hear often, and I've heard it first from a person called Gaur Gopal. He said that some people are so poor that all they have is money. And I think that, taking the spiritual fun topic to one side, but just being content and happy and having fun with the basics, the bare necessities of life. I think there's something about that maybe we're missing here as human beings. Just the simplicity can also be fun.
Yeah.
But then when we now turn it to the spiritual side, like I want to discuss what does spiritual fun even look like? Blissfully performed service. I mean, service is usually connotated with being on austerity.
Yeah.
So how does that work?
It's fun, and Keli mentioned in Sanskrit earlier, said param dristva nivartate, right? It means the higher taste, the fun you're experiencing is so simple yet satisfying that you don't feel a temptation for gaining happiness or pleasure out of things that were destructive for you previously. It's the notion that this has satisfied me, and therefore I don't feel the need to seek it elsewhere. If something didn't satisfy you, you'd be like, all right, I need to get the fix. So it's the notion of, I'm actually satisfied by this. My pleasure-seeking potency is actually, filled up as a result of this. And it's also, the other thing is it's ever expanding.
Right.
You never get tired of it.
Right.
You know?
Like imagine organizing a retreat for 55 people to Vrindavan, a village, well, now it's basically becoming a city now in India, doing it with your best mates, having a whale of a time doing it. Okay, fine, there's some interesting things that happen during that retreat that people, have to go through, but there's no more fun thing than serving with your friends, a higher purpose.
Yeah.
And even when there's difficulties, it's difficulties that we all have to face then together rather than being alone.
Yeah.
There's something about this community of higher purpose that you can literally do anything and it will be fun.
Do you know what's really helped me in spiritual life?
What?
Is taking the practice seriously, but not taking myself seriously. That's really helped me. And I get on with those people who are also like that. They also don't take themselves. There's one thing that cracks me up every time. At the end of a kirtan, I'm sat next to Radhika and he's singing, and he'll stop the kirtan and he'll look at me and he'll go, "Do you know what time it is?" "It's kirtan time!" And then he'll start singing and it's the cheesiest thing.
Super cheese.
But it's just
Mature
so
cheddar,
like,
that is.
it's just so wonderful. There's like, here's a guy and there's like 300, 400 people that he's responsible for like facilitating, giving them a great time.
I should be a little bit more serious, shouldn't I?
But it's wonderful. No, but it's infectious. It's infectious. And it's nice to take the practice of spiritual life seriously, but not take ourselves seriously, because we're all works in progress, right?
Yeah, I love it.
I think we can become very rigid when we take ourselves seriously, and it's easy
to break.
to break. Yeah.
Easy to snap. Just need to be a loosey-goosey. I was watching School of Rock, the movie?
Oh, yeah?
School of Rock. Such a good
It's
movie.
a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Yeah.
Oh,
And then it's
Jack
just...
Black. Top lad.
Top lad.
Top guy.
Top lad, Jack Black.
let's get him on.
Yeah.
He's the guy who
As long
doesn't
as you
take
don't do anything
himself too
scandalous
seriously.
between now and then.
I was saying he's a guy who doesn't take himself seriously in that
Yeah.
movie. And then the principal, who's like super strict, super stern, needs to kind of loosen up a little bit because she kind of looks like she's going to snap, or she's snapping everyone out.
I remember this one point where I was like in a kirtan and I was trying to like describe something about how Krishna is the tender of cows. And I asked the audience, I was like, you know cows, right? Like, you've seen a cow before.
As if cows are so exotic. Right?
I mean, I'm just showing it just because like it was an obvious... Anyway, just something fun, just my stupidity, and also... I think exactly what you said. I don't like taking myself too seriously, especially when you have so much responsibility. Let the serious things be serious.
Yeah.
And then, the other stuff, just let it go. It's okay to be a little foolish sometimes. To be perceived. Otherwise, if you take yourself too seriously, the ego gets hurt when someone calls you out on your foolishness.
Yeah.
But if you already know I'm a foolish person, foolish, like I'm fun and I'm like, okay, I make mistakes. And if you know that already about yourself, then when someone calls you out and like, you just said, do you know what cow is? I will laugh about it because I was like, yeah, that is a very funny thing to say.
Life is just so much easier when we accept that we're fallible.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
The amount of times I drop stuff in a day, it's like, bro, not only did God give me one hand, he gave me two, right? And I'm still dropping stuff. It's like, but if I reprimanded myself every time I did something stupid, I'd be such a miserable person to be around.
Yeah.
But
I was sat next to someone during japa at the temple once.
yeah,
And facial hair is not something that's conventional.
Yeah.
And so this devotee, he leans in and he goes, "Oh, why you have this? What is this?" And I knew where it was coming from. He was going to try and like reprimand me on something. And I just leaned in a bit further and just went, "Looks nice, isn't it?" He laughed, I laughed. We just got on with it. I chanted, he chanted. End of the story. Otherwise, if you get into the whole like debate of everything with every single person, it's just like, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
I also think that, like, you know, when we take ourselves too seriously, Krishna can teach you a lesson and he will laugh at you.
The converse is also true. Like sometimes I'm not taking myself seriously enough.
And that makes you,
And then Krishna then teaches me, "Come on, man, like get serious."
Yeah.
So the converse is also true.
I like this part before the joyfully performed. It says that
What does it say? Let's have a look. It says it's everlasting.
everlasting. It's everlasting, which is really I don't know how best to articulate it, but for me it's like very faith building to know that the endeavor I put into spiritual life, whether it's serious or joyful, is accumulative and I'm making progress. In a material sense, we can do something in a very serious way or a very joyful way, and it can be thwarted or it can be lost, or a reputation could become scandalous or something, right? And we've had that experience of being knocked down a few notches and now we've got to climb back up to where we were. But in spiritual life, it's everlasting, meaning, you know, we never lose the credit or the sukriti, like our qualification to progress in spiritual life. Krishna's like our well-wisher and our best friend, you know. It's even said if you go to like a holy place or a sacred place and you sleep lying down on the floor, then Krishna sees that as you paying your obeisances, and he's like, "There's a point for you." And it's like, we weren't even trying, but he just racks on. Yeah, he wants a relationship so much that, you know, he's making it so easy, like having the bar so low for us to qualify, to transcend, you know.
And I think there's an aspect of that being done in a friendship group.
Yeah.
Like,
that's a huge point.
I think so, because I think fun is doing devotional service or being a spiritualist and having fun doing it is coupled with the fact that you're doing it with people that you can be your authentic self with. And you know, like one of my favorite things to do is do the intense service and then kick back after, eat some pizza and crack jokes about what just went on that day. It's like one of my favorite things to do.
Yeah.
You know, the the alternative is interesting because for the materialist or the non-spiritualist person, the fun that they experience has a limit to it. And when it reaches that limit, it only gets darker, weirder, and more strange. And they put more endeavor to try and sort of squeeze out what they can.
You mean on their own?
Or with others.
Oh.
You know?
So like, I didn't catch the
So,
point.
for example, let's say you experiment with a few drugs, some light drugs, you know, Class C. Yeah, it's all great time.
What's a Class E? Paracetamol?
C.
Oh, Class C. C. Okay. I thought it was a Class E. I was like, what's a Class E drug?
Boys, it was a wild weekend. The ibuprofen was really off the charts. I mean, honestly, I was just pain-free.
That Panadol, But yeah, it accelerates, right? It goes, I need to go harder. I need to try more. Before you know it, it's just super destructive. And so it's not temporary. And then it doesn't accumulate. And when you just try to stack, it actually becomes even more destructive, you know? And I think this can be said for so many ways. That the quality of joy and happiness from a material life is actually self-destructive in itself. And is limited in itself. And only leads us to just trying more and more and more. And before you know it, you're having like multiple illicit relationships totally smashed at your face and having really deep, dark thoughts or whatever it may be. Right?
Raghunath, I did a podcast with Raghunath, and he said something really interesting about Indian culture and India as a country. that India is right now chasing this Western pleasure. Like, you know, they all want to have the same things that we have in the West. And in one sense, they're already doing it. But what they haven't yet come across in one sense, and it's not become public yet, is the shards of glass of addiction. And, you know, all the things that come with an intensely material situation. It does have its repercussions. And so, you know, people chasing this, the American dream, sex, drugs, and rock and roll, it does have a destructive side to it as well. I was just going to say, should we talk about sex? Because it is, you know, like,
Yeah.
it's considered to be the highest joy in a material sense, but then where does that fit into spirituality? And I know I'm going to throw Nāma in it because he's our resident philosopher. So throwing it on him, where does it all fit in?
What's that?
Like, having intimate relationships is understood as being the pinnacle of joy in the material sense. And how does that work? Our camera guy's gone. How does it work with spirituality?
So I think like sex is a different category to things like intoxication and abuse, because it's the one thing that's biologically needed to reproduce, right? But then it's actually very interesting because it's purely used for reproduction. However, the human race is...
The spiritual definition? Or
Yes.
just in biological?
Even biological, scientifically, right?
I mean, what?
Scientifically,
All right. The purpose, you
the
mean?
purpose is that's how you reproduce. But humans' intervention was to isolate the pleasure part of it. So as human beings, as we all grown up, and the world commonly knows it, is to use contraceptive, use this, that, the other, to concentrate, take out the purpose, but keep the pleasure.
Well, yeah.
Right? Take out the purpose, but keep the pleasure. So in the Gita, it's interesting because Krishna says, I am sex life according to religious principles. And according to religious principles means within a, within wedlock and for the purpose of creating children. And so
Sounds very conservative,
it's
isn't it?
according to the modern world, yeah. According to the modern world. But is it a bad thing?
What, that we do it under
Yeah.
kind of a restrictive way?
Because a lot of people say, well, that's unnecessarily restricting yourself. You know, it's a normal thing in life. It's what we're human beings are meant to. It's not like I'm taking drugs. It's not like I'm going out on the lash on a Saturday night. It's a normal thing. Do you know what I mean?
Are you looking at me to say something?
Yeah, I'm trying to think what the hell to say about it.
Well,
I'm thinking about it. It's on my mind.
I think it's important to understand the standard. And what I really appreciate about scripture, actually in any spiritual lineage, but just taking the Bhagavad Gita, I really appreciate how the standard is so high, the bar is so high, because, as we've said, fallible human beings, we're always going to try and bring the standard down. And the lower we bring it, the lower we bring it, the lower we bring it, then the less there is to strive, right, for something. And it's actually in that endeavor that we ascend or transcend eventually.
Right.
And I really appreciate that there is this bar of like being a strict spiritualist is, perhaps being celibate, having a strict diet, restricting your activities or only performing spiritual activities. But also the application of that is dependent on an individual, right? And how they can sustainably progress in spiritual life,
Yeah.
right? Whilst trying to reach that standard.
Yeah.
And the difficulty, perhaps, hopefully it's not just me, but the difficulty I have is not becoming depressed by comparing myself to the standard and thinking, oh, it's impossible, I'll just give up.
Right.
But it's good. We see that and we strive for that. And one thing I really like about the friendship circle you were talking about is this idea that we rise by lifting others, and we can all encourage one another to progress, right? And we may fall down, and someone else can pick us back up, and then when they fall down, someone else can pick us back up, and we can all hold each other accountable to striving for that standard. But the moment we compare ourselves to it and we see how far away we are, then that's when it becomes difficult, in my opinion.
Yeah, what you're saying is profound, because it draws on the essential point that once you know what it is you want from this life, so once it's clear to you that I want to live a life of spirituality, then there are going to be some compromises. Just like with anything, like if you want to be the world's best footballer, I just watched a little bit of Cristiano Ronaldo's YouTube thing where he's talking about his sacrifices that he's made. And he said, look, I've written the playbook, go and do it. And it's incredible because a lot of people would consider him as the pinnacle of success in the sporting world.
Yeah.
But he's had to make sacrifices.
Yeah.
So if you want to be the best spiritualist, that's not the right way to put it, but if you want to be a successful spiritualist in attaining that love that is possible through the means of bhakti yoga perhaps, then there's some sacrifices you're going to have to make. And that's incredible because it means that you acknowledge that there's going to be some things that you're going to have to lessen your, but if you're not serious on it, like for example, for me, I feel like I'm maybe like, I don't know, if I was to give it a percentage, 60 or 70% serious. I do like the occasional coffee. I do like material things to an extent. I like wearing clothes that are not like torn up. I do like going on holiday once a year. I do like eating in restaurants. So there is a level of compromise that I'm making on myself in my attainment of. It's not that it's impossible. It's just I'm not taking the most direct route.
Sure.
And the same thing goes with like what we're talking about with sexual relationships. That it's not that you have to dry yourself out and like make it really hard for yourself. But at the same time, like you just set a standard for yourself that's achievable, that's realistic, and then you just try to strive for a little bit better as the years go by, rather than trying to constrain everything and then
but if you don't have a goal, then what's the point of
don't do it
being
for the sake of
austere?
doing it.
What's the point? Actually, that Krishna says that also in the Gita. Performing acts of penance or austerity just for the sake of it is undesirable. So if you want something, if you want to become a better athlete or a better musician or better in finance, you have to put the time in.
But do it and have fun doing it.
Yeah, that's a good point.
But it's also like you have to crystallize and make sure you really understand why you're doing what you're doing. This is like a big thing. So we talk a lot about progression, right? But it's easy to get stuck in the journey because we haven't solidified why we want that and why we actually, that is the goal.
Yeah.
When you talk about all these restrictions and the ideal state of practicing something, if you haven't actually crystallized, I know this is why the restriction needs to make, because it will help me do X, Y, and Z. If we haven't computed that and fully digested that, that journey isn't going to be a journey. It's just going to be a hole.
There's another part to that as well. It's like you can know the goal, but if you don't know your swadharma, means your worldly place. Like, how do I navigate in this world? What is my dharma? What is my responsibility? How can I serve in this world in a way that I'll be happy? If the goal and your dharma, your those two are aligned, your sanatan dharma and your swadharma. Krishna in the Gita, he repeats two sets of verses. One set of verses about remembering me, man mana bhava mad bhakto. He repeats that twice in the Gita. And he also repeats another set of verses that is to do with dharma. Understanding who you are, what am I good at, what do I like to do, in very, very basic terms. We could go into this in a whole new episode. Maybe we should do an episode on sanatan swadharma to come. But once you understand who you are, in essence, and how you should serve in this world, then an element of fun can come into play. Otherwise, it can be quite strenuous. You might have the goal, but don't really know who you are. And so it's always difficult. It's hard to have fun doing it. So I think that's a really good place to end on this one.
Yeah.
Lots of food for thought. Have fun doing it. Lots of love. See you on the next episode for Soul's sake. Goodbye. If you enjoyed this podcast, you're sure to appreciate my conversation with Janavi Harrison, where we delve into the crossroads of spirituality, progress, and relationships whilst I was in India.
Creativity and being artful is something that everyone has and everyone can access. And I think it's more about, again, connecting to that deeper place within ourselves of intuition and playfulness, a sense of lightness, you know, which can be quite hard in life. There's a lot of things to feel heavy about, but we are much more like that naturally as children.